Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Thursday, March 20th. We don't get to say that often, but there's a special reason we're doing an episode today, Payton, and that is because the NCAA Tournament officially begins Thursday. Of course, while we're recording this, once you've listened to it, you've already seen the first four play-in games recording here on Wednesday, so you already know the outcomes. You already know how the field of 64 officially looks, but the Tigers will be kicking off action Thursday night at 6:35 on True TV against the Drake Bulldogs. I feel like people have had a lot of time since Selection Sunday to really think about this one, tell themselves why Mizzou is going to win handily, or tell them why Drake is going to pull off an upset with an 11-6 matchup here, Payton. And I think a good place to start, just to kind of get the ball rolling on your takes and what you think of this game before we throw it over to myself and Jack, is just give me your keys to the game, Payton. I want three keys. Like you have a keychain right up, and we'll go. I'm gonna hold it up right here. You see the keychain? I'm gonna hold this key up right here. This first key. What is this first key, Payton?
I think the first key in this game, there's a lot of different ways it could go. I think it's just got to come down to Missouri has to dictate the pace that this game is played at. These are two completely warring, just contrasting styles. Drake is far and away the slowest team in the country. I believe I saw a stat. They have the most made shots in the final 4 seconds of a shot clock in the country. They want to grind teams to dust. That's kind of why their defense, like you look at they don't give up many points per game at all. That's because Drake is trying to play a game where they have maybe 50 possessions a game. And that is just an absurdly low number compared to what Missouri wants to do. I hate to bring this up, but you got to kind of, a reason I think this is so important is you kind of got to go back and look at the Princeton game, I think, from a couple of years ago. Missouri, we all know, played absolutely it almost gave me a heart attack watching Dennis Gates' first team, because the contrast between how that team played, just their hair was on fire, shoot the ball immediately, compared to what it was under Gonzo Martin, was just like a shock to the system. Missouri doesn't play quite as frantic. I think they are a bit more comfortable in the half court, but they don't play Drake slow. Nobody plays Drake slow. I mean, and you think about that Princeton game, what really did them in was Princeton also liked to play a lot more half court style. That's what they were able to kind of slow Missouri down, take all their guys out of the game. Missouri was never settled in. I think Dennis Gates would be smart to look back at that game in some ways and kind of determine how he can get Drake sped up. I really think that is the key in this one. There's holes in this Drake team that you can poke, I think, but none of it. You're not going to be able to take advantage of any of it, I think, if you let Drake slow the game down and kind of drag this into a 57-55 game with 2 minutes left. I don't think that's where Missouri wants to be.
Payton, I'm not sure if it's something of, when you get to the NCAA tournament, you're hearing probably the most previews of any part of the basketball season. I feel like you know more of your opponent in that first round of the NCAA tournament than you know about any other opponent the entire year, because you have 4 or 5 days leading up to that game. You're knowing everything about Drake. I didn't know much about Drake coming in the year other than Northwestern State's coach was there and they were playing well, because we have a buddy in Iowa that's been talking our ears off about the Drake Bulldogs recently. But I feel like you just know so much about it. I don't know if that's a case of that or what I've been listening to. But with how slow it has felt this week, it feels just like that pace of play that Drake is. I don't know about you, Payton. It feels like we've just been waiting for this Mizzou game to happen. And that's where I kind of want to go into the second key is, with a couple days off, getting rested, you got out of the SEC tournament in your second game. Where do you want to see this offense go? I'm going to dictate your second key here. It has an O on it. Offensively, Mark Mitchell coming back into the equation. Where do you see these Tigers going?
Well, the obvious matchup, and it's kind of what I pointed out like right away, like when Jack and I did the reaction show, it's kind of like the popular thing on Twitter. It feels like Missouri has to run this offense through Mark Mitchell. Mark Mitchell's back healthy. He said today he'll be a full go in this one. Not that I think there was any doubt about that. But although Kenny liked to troll and pretend that Mark Mitchell might have missed this game. I think that is like a key, an obvious sound strategy. You look at just the size of these Drake players; they don't have a good match with Mark Mitchell. Their tallest player is Cam Manyawu, a sophomore who's 6'9", but I don't think he has quite the same weight. I have a feeling Drake has not played a player that kind of gets to the rim and is just such a mismatch comparatively, like Mark Mitchell is. I believe I tweeted out, like, I don't know how they'll guard Mitchell, and a couple Drake fans actually did reply to me. I think they said they'll see a lot of Abreu and Manyawu probably switching off, trying to slow him down. Someone did make a good point. I would expect Drake, if it really comes down to it, I think they're going to send doubles, triples at Mark Mitchell, try and swipe the ball, because Mark Mitchell has, for all the good he's done this year, he's had a couple games where he's kind of had a lot of turnovers because he just kind of gets the ball and gets a little bit tunnel vision, and teams have swiped the ball away from him. So I think a lot of it is going to run through Mark Mitchell. Mark Mitchell has to be ready if he's doubled and tripled to kick it out to the open shooters, because I think they are going to have opportunities in this game to have a lot of open looks. And I think that if Missouri is able to knock down 7 or 8 of those 3-pointers, I think they'll be in good shape. One other thing I thought of, I doubt that Drake has seen a guard quite in a similar style to Tony Perkins. Tony Perkins, I thought played his 2 best games of the year, honestly, in the SEC tournament, bullied his way to the paint, and just really was just a problem for both Florida and Mississippi State. I'd really like to see him try and stay that aggressive against this Drake team. Bennett Sturts, the starting guard, the star of this Drake team. I think he's played some crazy stat, more than 97% of their minutes this year. He's kind of going to be the guy I think that has to kind of take that matchup a lot. He's 6'4". He's decent size as well. He followed Ben McCollum from Northwest Missouri State. He's one of, I think, like 4 players that did that. But I'd like to see a lot of sets where you get Josh Gray down in the paint. Josh Gray has done such a great job this year of just kind of plowing his way into the paint and letting, at times it's been Tamar Bates, at times it's been Ant Robinson, just follow him down into the paint. I'd like to see Tony Perkins kind of be that guy, because I think Tony Perkins in general is going to be a tougher guard for Drake, and I'd like to see just kind of Josh Gray almost act like a bowling ball, and just kind of clear the pins out a little bit, and then have Tony Perkins kind of get to the rim there. I think there's going to be a lot of and one opportunities for both Mark Mitchell and Tony Perkins in particular.
That's great offensive talk. And this last key, Payton, pulling it down, last one for you, has your name on it. You tell me your last key of the game, how Mizzou has to beat Drake.
I really think they need to, what needs to happen really is, I just think Missouri, for one, like I said, the tempo needs to be dictated by Missouri. They cannot let Drake slow this game to a halt. At times, Drake is going to be able to do that, but Missouri needs to just get them out on the run as fast as they can a lot. One other key, just the last key, I think I really kind of want to see. I'd really like to see this team be able to create some turnovers. Drake, this year, Drake is a great team at forcing turnovers. They're top 10 in the nation, like Missouri is. One thing Drake is not very good at, they are pretty loose with the football. They turn the ball over 18.6% of their offensive possessions. That's 277th in the nation. This all comes from Torvik, by the way. Handy dandy Torvik. I think that is such a big key for Missouri, is just get to just Anthony Robinson needs to stay out of foul trouble, and he needs to make Bennett Sturtz's life a living hell at the top of the key. Drake wants to go ahead and try and take these slow possessions up. That's going to make steals and just transition buckets the other way. Like, it's going to make a transition 3 feel like it's worth like 5 points. Like, just transition buckets in this game that Missouri gets are going to feel all the more important because Drake, quite frankly, is not equipped to kind of answer back. They don't play that way. So I just think I'd really like to see Missouri just create havoc on the defensive end like they were really early in SEC play and in non-con play. Just get some of those easy transition buckets out on the run. If Missouri can get to like a 14-6 run to start this game by the time the 15-minute mark rolls around, I think we're going to be really, really liking where this Missouri team is sitting.
We're going to talk about it even more. You're looking at had the wrong tab open there. If you're watching this on YouTube,
gave away our weekly our itinerary.
Yeah, our itinerary was up. But yeah, Payton, you hit on it really well there, just talking about Drake, and we'll get to it in a couple more minutes where we'll get Jack's keys to the game and just what he's kind of feeling about this one as well. But before we do that, just one more thing that just came out of the media day today with all the press being around the team, getting some final thoughts before this game happened, and just really the big newsworthy thing besides Mark Mitchell looking good in practice. I know he had a knee sleeve on, but ready to go and play is Jacob Cruz. And we had this conversation, Payton, about would you want him back next year? He has an extra year of eligibility because of the JUCO waiver. What do you kind of make of it that he's going to be returning to the Tigers next season?
Well, we had that conversation, I think, right after Alabama or so, like around there. So then the rest of the season after that happened. And I was not really in favor of him returning. I'll be honest, I never really expected anything other than him returning, so it didn't really catch me off guard. There is something to be said, like that a second-year transfer bump is a very real thing. Guys that stick around typically fare very well in their second year at a new program. And there are some, Jacob Cruz has been a much better shooter as the year has gone on. There's just so many other things that I really question with him, though. He's going to be a guy that probably has to play 20-plus minutes next year. And if he's the same player, that is not good news for Missouri, in my opinion. But like I said, second-year transfer bump hopefully hits him pretty well. Hopefully familiarity in a new place, just the same system. Hopefully that all benefits him. But I'm not really shocked by it to just kind of put that out there.
Depending on the night, probably the second or third option, and the roster will look different next year. That Missouri's going to do something in the portal, adding experienced guys. But you're coming in next year, and he's looking like a number one guy off the bench, just on who's returning mainly because with Caleb Grill, moving on, running out of eligibility, and then just kind of, how the roster shakes up from there. He's probably the first guy off the bench, and it does kind of play into those extra minutes. But of course, we really don't know how this roster is going to look, and that's probably going to be a conversation we'll have a little bit deeper into May once this roster is set for next year. Payton, a little bit more basketball news before we throw it over to Jack and I. Kellie Harper, the new women's basketball coach for the University of Missouri. This kind of came pretty fast on Tuesday. The news was pretty quick. A couple news breaks, and then later that day, it was official that Kellie Harper was named the new women's basketball coach. Spent a couple seasons at Tennessee. What do you like about Kellie, and what does she bring to this Mizzou program?
Yeah, I'm a fan of this hire. I think she was Mari's second choice when we had her on to discuss it. Obviously Molly Miller was number one, but Molly Miller appears to be staying in Arizona, probably going to Arizona State. I think this is probably that next tier candidates, though. I'm a fan of Kellie Harper. She's been a coach for well over a head coach for well over almost nearing on 2 decades. She was at Western Carolina first, brought them to the NCAA tournament once or twice, brought them to the NIT as well. took over at NC State, took them to the tournament. She's been in Missouri before. She coached at Most State for most of the 2010s. Brought them to the NCAA tournament twice, even took them on a Sweet 16 run in her last year there before she returned to her alma mater at Tennessee. She did do the results were okay. Were not bad at Tennessee. She was third in the conference, made the Sweet 16 in her last year there. She was one made three-pointer from Camila Cardoso, who had not made a three-pointer all year for South Carolina from probably winning the SEC. But I believe Tennessee fired her because they didn't believe she was recruiting like up to the standard. And that'll probably be the main question for her here is how she recruits. But I think Kellie Harper is very clearly like a big floor raiser for this program, and that's kind of what they need at the moment. Just the program's not in a good state right now, to be honest. They just need. She's the fifth coach in program history. The program has hardly ever even been to the tournament. So if she can get them to a level where they're just making the tournament consistently, I think that's a big win for them. I don't find a whole ton of issues with this hire. Quite frankly, is she the one that'll probably bring the women's program to a Final Four and all that? I doubt it. But that's not what this program needs right now. If she can just raise the floor of it and bring them to the tournament consistently, make the Sweet 16 every so often, I think Kellie Harper is capable of doing that before passing the baton off to someone who hopefully can kind of build on a foundation that's been laid.
It's looking at that Missouri logo up there next to the SEC in women's basketball. You want to change the image of that logo, and I think that's exactly what you bring an experienced winner in the SEC in to do. It says proven recruiter in the tweet from Mizzou Athletics, but from what you're saying, Payton, if that's not something that's
a little embellishing.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I mean, it's a hard place to recruit. It is an SEC's program. You do get to play in the SEC. But you look at the recent history, it's just like you want to go to a place where you have an opportunity to win, play early. There's always these, things that you want to check the boxes. And, the past couple like big hires at Mizzou, you look at Eli Drinkwitz, Dennis Gates, two big guys that were, recruiting, attached onto them and did a lot in the recruiting game and kind of changed the face of those programs too. And you showed people that, you can play here and you can contribute and win. And I think that's something you want to see at the end of the women's side as well. And so I think that's, what we'll be kind of monitoring with Kellie moving forward. Payton, this time of year, though, when there's a new coaching hire, there's graphics everywhere, in Memorial Stadium up on the board. And, Kellie Harper could do no wrong. Dennis Gates could do no wrong. Eli Drinkwitz could do no wrong when they were hired. It's always just a funny part of the year because, you just see it and everyone's like, yeah, Mizzou's is fixed. It's all these things and the person could do no wrong. And then maybe you get to SEC play and this team might lose 4 games in a row. And then you start to wonder, but it is a program that's going to need time to turn around.
Yeah. I mean, look, just the recruiting for Princeton kind of dropped off at the end. I mean, just if Kellie Harper could just be a better player developer, I really if she could, I think there's some the whole team is obviously going to need pretty serious facelift. But if players like Judd, Slaughter, Shrek, those 3 players, if Kellie Harper can just help them take a leap, because that's really, I think, a big reason Missouri kind of tapered off under Pynchon was just players were not taking the leaps I think everyone was expecting. Haley Frank became a good player. I don't think she kind of reached the expectations that a lot of people had for them. Lauren Hansen never became this super just lethal offensive weapon. She was very inconsistent. That's just kind of been the problem since the Sophie Cunningham days, since the Porter days. And I think that's probably the first step is just developing the pieces you have better, get some recruiting wins. Missouri does not need to be a top half of the SEC program to have this hire be successful, in my opinion. If they're just throwing elbows in the middle of the pack, making the tournament consistently, I think you can consider this hire a very good one.
Sophie with some good words there, just about the hire. On Kellie Harper, I'm thrilled for the hiring of Kellie Harper as Mizzou's next women's basketball coach. Kellie and her husband John have experience winning in both Missouri and in the SEC. As Payton mentioned, that Missouri is most state. I have so much respect for Coach Harper, and I can't wait to support her and our Tigers however I can. I know from experience how incredible this fan base is when they're excited about women's basketball, and I can't wait to get Mizzou Arena rocking. Congratulations to Laird, the board of curators, and Mizzou Nation on a fantastic hire. MIZ baby. That's from Sophie Cunningham. She's been a topic on our show recently, just with Indiana. Now she gets to throw some words in the ring about the new hire for women's basketball. Payton, I mean, any other takes, any other thoughts before we throw it over to Jack and I?
No, I mean, if you're talking the women's hire specifically, I do think it's a very good hire. I know I kind of expected it to be Jeff Mittie. The more time went on, that's kind of where the smoke kind of was leading. I think Kellie Harper is kind of a more exciting hire to me, personally. I'm encouraged by that. I didn't think. I know a lot of people were questioning who in the world would want the Missouri job. I think that hiring someone like Kellie Harper proves that it's still an SEC job in basketball at the end of the day. There is something there.
We got a pretty exciting message from Mari too after the hire was made. It was all caps, just very excited. Like you said, her second option, still a top choice for her. She knows her game. Before the show ends, we're going to talk some men's basketball back over with Jack and I, and we'll close it out then. All right, we're cutting back to Tuesday now. We're recording this, and the other part hasn't even happened yet. Well, we're kind of at the moment. So
it's a puzzle piece show. That's just how it is in this time of year. It is what it is.
So it is currently Tuesday. So we're getting like two different kind of feels for the game heading into Thursday. Different kind of show we talked about in the intro. But Jack, I mean, you're going to be heading to Cleveland when Payton and I record our part. But just right off the bat, I mean, how do you defeat Drake?
Yeah, so I'm a little bummed because I will be fulfilling some other March Madness obligation coverage duties to cover Alabama and Cleveland. And my flight up there is actually, I think, going to take place during the game. So I think I actually won't be able to watch, which maybe is a good thing. I feel like sometimes I can be a curse on Missouri. I feel like they've probably lost more games I've been able to watch this year than I've won. But yeah, I think the way they beat Drake, plain and simple, is it feels like it's going to come down to a battle of which team tries to impose its style the best, and which team is the most effective at that. I think, if it's a game that is going to be in the 70s, I feel like Missouri is probably the favorite there. Drake is literally the slowest team in the country. So it's kind of boring ball, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I have them in a weird vibe. I usually hate watching slow teams play. I think of like St. Mary's is another one in this tournament that plays super slow, and I don't really like watching them. And maybe Missouri fans won't like watching Drake either, although they're a little bit more fun because at least they've got, Sturtz can score. He's a fun player. But I really think it's going to be about Mizzou trying to speed them up. I think a lot of teams this year, especially teams in the non-con before everyone figured out what kind of commodity Drake was, I feel like a lot of teams in the non-con tried to play how they did, and that really doesn't work. I think Missouri has to try and make them run. I think Missouri has to try and turn them over. It's going to be tough because I feel like Missouri's defense, to an extent, has gotten figured out, and I don't doubt that Ben McCollum is going to do a pretty extensive scout on that. But I think if Missouri can get its offense going, that's the main key team-wise. I don't know if you're going to ask me about an individual, but yeah, I think it's got to be pace. Pace is going to win Missouri this game.
What a season for Drake. I think people don't see that either. 30-3. And those three losses were to Murray State, 66-59, UIC 74-70. And the most recent one was against Bradley in conference play, which is a lot of green
a
lot of green on the schedule. Wins over Miami, of course. It was a coaching change at Miami. Larinaga leaving there. Vanderbilt, though, at home of all places, 81-70. Also beat Kansas State 73-70. So there's just, some good wins in there, some good games in there from Drake. Player wise though, who really just kind of stands alone when you think about the Drake Bulldogs and who you're looking at here? Because there's a guy on this team that's averaging 19 points a game.
Yeah, it's Bennett Sturts, right? Like, I mean, there's people, I think the college basketball, real sickos of the world probably were lobbying for him to be an All-American. That came out, which we'll get to that in quick hits. That came out on Tuesday, and he wasn't on there, and probably had an argument. Everything runs through him. I think I read or heard something that I think he's played the most minutes of anyone in the country. I think they literally just let him go the whole game. And I think they are going to need him to do that against Missouri. But he's the guy, just kind of a no nonsense scorer. He doesn't turn the ball over. He gets into the paint. He's able to get his buckets. He doesn't do anything too flashy, just a good kind of all around scorer. And yeah, I think they're going to be, I think they're going to have, I mean, he's obviously going to have to play a good game. There's other guys who can hurt you on this Drake team. I know you and Payton are going to get into the weeds of it, but they're pretty small. I mean, Sturts himself is only 6'4", was obviously one of the ones he brought over, Ben McCollum brought over from the D2 level, which it just must be such a clash for Missouri fans who probably I'm sure there's some Northwest Missouri State fans who are also Mizzou fans who would have probably loved rooting for Drake in this tournament and now been kind of put in a little bit of a rock and a hard place. But yeah, I mean, 19 points a game. He shoots 38% from three and about 5 attempts per game. He's 19 points a game on about 13 field goals is really efficient. He can play some defense too. He averages over 2 steals a game. So ball control, I think is going to be big for Mizzou. Not that Drake necessarily likes to run, but certainly Mizzou can't lose possessions because you'll start to lose the tempo if that happens. But yeah, I think somehow slowing him down, maybe it's a case you try and shut everyone else down or get everyone else to turn over or turn the ball over. And it's a case of where he scores 20 and no one else scores more than 10 and you win the game. But yeah, he's someone that's going to absolutely have to be the focal point there at 6'4". That's the nice thing. I kind of think Missouri's got a few guys that can guard him. I mean, he's not this dominant big, that you're used to seeing. I think you'll see Tamar Bates on him. I think Anthony Robinson can guard him as a bigger guard. Maybe if it's someone like Marcus Allen that has to come in and do a good job on him if there's foul trouble. If you want to throw an Aiden Shaw, we saw him play really well against Mississippi State. If Mark Mitchell's not all the way healthy, does he have to play more minutes? He can guard him, I think. And so, yeah, it's going to have to be everyone as a collective kind of making him the primary assignment and focusing on doing a good job on him. Because then I think you can really start to give Drake some problems.
That's one guy I want to talk about, Mark Mitchell. So my final question here for you, Jack, and one of them is just, Mark Mitchell, presumably coming back for this game. Dennis Gates mentioned, he could have gone in that final SEC tournament game against Florida, but they chose to sit him out. Him and then Caleb Grill. I feel like we haven't really seen Caleb Grill do a takeover in a little while, but he's back in his hometown. He's in Wichita. Yeah. He's going to have family everywhere. This is his last go in an NCAA tournament, last opportunity. I mean, for those two, how big is this game?
I think it's bigger for Mitchell than it is for Grill from just Mizzou winning the game. I mean, the Grill hometown piece is fun. And I think certainly he needs to start hitting some shots. Certainly if they want to get through that round of 32 games, should they win this one, they're going to need him. But the X factor is absolutely Mark Mitchell. Drake is small. They don't deploy a super big lineup. They're, I think, in the 130s in terms of overall roster height. So they go with a really small starting five. And we have seen Mitchell make mismatches out of guys his size and even bigger sometimes. I was kind of trying to look back at just SEC teams similar to Drake, and you look at some of those slow tempo teams like Tennessee, Texas A&M, then you look at some teams that are a bit smaller. I think of that first Oklahoma game that Mitchell was absolutely able to dominate. I think it's going to have to be a game like that for him, and I think Mizzou's going to have to play with the kind of prowess on the rebounds, because Drake is still an all right rebounding team. I think they do a good job as a team grabbing the boards, but in terms of creating offensive mismatches, I think Mitchell should be able to do that constantly, like we saw against Oklahoma in the regular season. I'm looking for that. And then, yeah, whatever you can get out of Grill. I mean, if it's a matter of getting him going to try and make a run, I know you're taking it one game at a time, but you're going to feel really good if you beat Drake and he scores 16 points on 4 made threes just with how he's been playing. that's going to be helpful. But in terms of like, I could see a world where Caleb Grill, obviously if he goes for 20, I think they've lost like once or something. If he goes for 20, I think they'll be fine. But even if he is in that like 12 to 16 range, if Mitchell is not scoring, I could still see it being like a Drake win. But, maybe you look at Grill's points as a sign of Missouri's establishing the tempo. But man, I've gone so back and forth about how to feel about this game. It's ridiculous. Like I really like, I was scared for whatever. I'm a bracket. Like, listen, I grew up a Wisconsin fan. They made the tournament every year. I was terrified of whoever they played. I'm a bracket superstition person when it comes to my team. I automatically think the team they're going to play is going to turn into the best thing in the world. I thought that about Utah State in 2023. Like, that's just how I am. I think on paper, when I put my objective hat on, like, I think Missouri matches up well here. And I really think they match up well against Texas Tech too. I know Texas Tech has an All-American in JT Toppin, but man, I felt like this draw is good for Mizzou, and I really think they can get it done here. So I really hope they do, and we'll see. Like I said, I think I'll be in the air for. It's at 6:40, right? It's like at
6:35 on True TV.
Yeah, I think I'll be flying during the game, so I might not see the result. That's gonna be a stressful plane ride. So much for sleeping. We'll see if I watch it, if I buy the Wi-Fi, but. I don't know. I'm excited, Kenny. I'm excited. I know you and Payton talked about it, so I'm probably going on and on about topics you guys touched on. Like Kenny said, we're in the past, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Final thing, Jack. Score prediction.
Oh God, don't make me do this. If it's a Mizzou win, 82-74 Mizzou. I think it can probably be less than that even, but I think Mizzou getting in the 80s, you feel pretty good. I just don't know. I don't think Drake's got the tempo to run with teams like Mizzou if Mizzou can really get going. I mean, we got to keep telling ourselves, like, this is one of the most high tempo, efficient offenses in the country when it's at its best. It just hasn't been at its best for the last 4 games. So, you gotta see, but they can't. I think they, like the Mississippi State game, they could kind of win a rock fight there. You can't do that against Drake. That's how they want to play. That's how they've beaten people all year. I think you got to get out and run. So we'll see.
That's going to do it for our little special edition. Jump in the week with our Thursday.
I forced Kenny to do this. I said, I want to get my 2 cents in. I can't record during the Payton Kenny segment. So we're going to do our own separate thing.
Good to have Jack, give his opinion on this. Probably won't see much of Jack. March is a month where he disappears for the last 3 or 4 years now. But that game is at 6:35 on True TV in Wichita at the Intrust Bank Arena. Hopefully Ronnie DeGray in the stands. I think that would be a cool ad. But of course, Missouri is the 6th seed at 22-11, and Drake coming in as the 11th seed in the West region. 30-3. So that's kind of how it's going to shake up. And no matter the result, we'll have a show on Friday. Until then, enjoy the game.